She wasn't guessing. She was there. She heard it with her own ears. She watched it play out from the inside. That makes her words not just powerful, they're undeniable. This wasn't just a player speaking out. This was a whistleblower striking the match beneath the league's most explosive secret. The WNBA had been selling unity, sisterhood, progress. But what Sophie exposed was something else entirely: betrayal, jealousy, and insecurity dressed up as tradition. And once she spoke, there was no stuffing the truth back into the bottle. Then came the math, ugly, undeniable math. Caitlin Clark is generating over $1 billion in league value this year. That's not an exaggeration. That's the projection. And yet her salary, $78,766. Less than the cost of a used pickup truck. $1 billion engine driving the league forward, strapped to a 5-figure contract. Let that sink in. But it didn't stop there. The very teams benefiting from her fame, the ones selling out arenas, landing sponsorship deals, watching their TV ratings, spike, are the same ones plotting how to knock her down. That's not just hypocrisy. That's theft. Sophie was the first to say it out loud. If you're smart, you're making money off her. So who cares who gets the credit? She wasn't wrong. The league should be protecting her, amplifying her, building around her. Instead, they stood by and watched her get shoved, mocked, and sidelined. Why? Because they couldn't stomach who the spotlight chose. But Sophie didn't hesitate. She said what every executive was too afraid to admit. This is what we've always wanted: more fans, more buzz, more relevance. And yet, when it came time to acknowledge the woman at the center of it all, the league turned its back. That silence wasn't a slip. It was a strategy, a deliberate decision to protect egos instead of talent. And Sophie wasn't done. She torched the myth that Caitlin Clark isn't the face of the league. When critics pushed back, Sophie pushed harder. Who else would it be? Sabrina Ionescu, great player, no doubt, but the face of the league, not even close. Sophie didn't drag anyone else down. She just spoke the truth. A truth backed by numbers, sold-out arenas, record-breaking ratings, jerseys flying off shelves. The kind of impact you can't fake. When people tried to downplay Clark's influence, Sophie didn't just disagree, she dismantled them. You're dumb if you think the league would be where it is without her, she said. Not mistaken. Dumb. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. And that honesty is exactly what fans had been begging for. Clark's presence isn't a flash in the pan. It's a turning point. A fundamental shift in what the league can be. And every team cashing checks off her name needs to start acting like they actually deserve her. Sophie made it clear. This isn't about putting her on a pedestal. It's about giving her the respect she's earned. From the moment Clark stepped on a WNBA court, that respect has been missing. Sophie didn't just make her point, she threw down the gauntlet. She challenged the rest of the league to prove her wrong. And so far, no one has. Then came the part that cracked the entire narrative wide open: the referees. For months, fans had been grumbling about the officiating, but no one within the league had the courage to speak on it, until Sophie did. She didn't dance around it. She named it bias, plain and simple. Clark is taking hits that would get other players ejected, but for her, nothing. No flags, no whistles, just hit after hit with no accountability. Sophie laid it out in black and white. Opponents grabbing her, shoving her after the ball's gone, barreling into her on screens like it's open season, and the refs, silent, business as usual. But here's what made it sticks. Sophie wasn't whining. She wasn't speculating. She was comparing it to her own experience. If I made those plays, I'd be ejected, she said. But for Clark, crickets. That's not rookie hazing. That's a double standard, and it's one the league hasn't even tried to address. Her words lit the internet on fire. Fans went back through every game, every replay, every moment. Clark hit the hardwood without a whistle, and suddenly, the league couldn't pretend anymore. The evidence was right there, in every slow-motion clip, every ignored foul. The pattern had been hiding in plain sight. Sophie just made the world see it. The evidence was public, and the silence at the top it was louder than ever. When Sophie pulled back the curtain, what fans saw wasn't just bias, it was betrayal. Betrayal by a league that claims to champion its stars. And the cost of that betrayal, it could be everything. Then came the word that changed everything. After Sophie's foul, after the ejection, after the chaos, Caitlin Clark looked her dead in the eyes and said one word: finally. Just that, finally. And in that one word, an entire season's worth of pain came pouring out. Clark had been waiting for someone, anyone, to stand up for her. She didn't need a speech. She didn't need an apology. She needed a teammate, willing to go to war for her. And in Sophie Cunningham, she found that warrior. Sophie's response was simple: I got you. From that moment on, the Indiana Fever changed. They weren't just a team anymore. They were a unit. A unit that wasn't going to let their star get punished for shining too bright. Sophie didn't just protect Clark physically. She validated her emotionally. And that kind of validation, it's rare. It's powerful. It changes everything. Since that moment, Sophie has been the first to step in when things get physical. The first to square up. The first to say, not on my watch. And it's not just about Clark anymore. It's about every star who's ever been left hanging by the system that was supposed to support them. The revolution Sophie sparked isn't just about basketball. It's about truth, loyalty, and fighting for those who make the game matter. And as long as Sophie has a platform, she's going to keep swinging, because this isn't over. Not even close. But the most chilling part of this entire saga isn't what Sophie exposed. It's what the WNBA refused to do afterward, when confronted with allegations of premeditated targeting, economic exploitation, and referee bias. The league had a choice. They could have launched an investigation. They could have issued a statement. They could have stood up and said, this isn't who we are. Instead, they fined Sophie $900 and went completely silent. No apology, no denial, no plan for change, just silence. And in that silence, they confirmed everything. Because if Sophie had been lying, wouldn't the league have come out swinging? If there was no bias, no collusion, no jealousy, wouldn't they be eager to clear their name? But they weren't, because they couldn't. Sophie hit a nerve so deep, so raw, that the only defense left was to pretend it didn't happen. But fans aren't stupid. They watched it unfold in real time. They saw Clark hit the hardwood, again and again. They saw the missed calls, the bruises, the isolation. And now, they've seen the receipts. What Sophie ignited was more than a moment. It was a movement. Social media didn't just cheer her on. They rallied. The memes, the fan art, the edited videos of Sophie as Clark's bodyguard, all speaks to something bigger than basketball. It speaks to a fan base that's fed up. Fed up with the gaslighting. Fed up with the politics. Fed up with a league that celebrates its stars in commercials, but leaves them to fend for themselves on the court. This wasn't just a moment of virality. It was a message. We see you. We know what you're doing. And we're not going to be quiet anymore. Now, the ripple effects are undeniable. Other players are starting to talk, some publicly, others in whispers. Reporters are asking the questions they used to avoid. Commentators are finally addressing the elephant in the room during broadcasts. What Sophie did wasn't just brave, it was contagious. And that contagion is spreading across locker rooms, across social feeds, across an entire generation of fans who are watching this story unfold like a sports version of a whistleblower drama. And if the league thought this would fade away, they made a catastrophic miscalculation. Because here's the truth. You can't silence a revolution once it's begun. Sophie Cunningham didn't just foul someone. She fouled the system. She challenged the very foundation the WNBA has built its image upon, and now, that image is cracking. What happens next is up to the league. But one thing is certain, Sophie's not backing down. Clark's not alone anymore, and the fans, they're watching. Closely, loudly, relentlessly. It started like any other WNBA game. The buzz, the lights, the crowd humming with anticipation. But when Sophie Cunningham stepped onto that court, she had no idea she was about to ignite a firestorm. This wasn't just a teammate defending another, it was the exact moment the WNBA's most carefully constructed illusion began to unravel before millions of eyes. For weeks, the league had spun a neat narrative. Caitlin Clark was simply going through the typical rookie hazing. Nothing unusual, just the growing pains of breaking into professional sports. But Sophie Cunningham shattered that illusion with one act. One statement, one refusal to keep quiet. Fans had been asking the same questions over and over. Why is Clark getting hit so often? Why are referees ignoring blatant fouls? Why is no one in the league speaking up? The silence had been deafening, till Sophie stepped forward. Her voice cut through the noise with honesty, frustration, and boldness the league hadn't anticipated. She didn't soften her words. She didn't check with PR. She called it what it was: systematic targeting. Jealousy dressed up as competitive spirit, and a league too scared or too complicit to do anything about it. This wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a reckoning. The league didn't expect this from Sophie. To them, she was a role player, nothing more. But that's exactly why it hit so hard. Role players are the eyes and ears of the game. They're on every bench, in every practice, listening to the locker room chatter. They see what stars miss, hear what cameras never catch. Sophie had been watching closely, and when she spoke, she didn't just offer opinion. She came with receipts, with names, with nothing to lose. Her moment didn't arrive during a press conference or a viral tweet. It came in a game, in a flash of raw emotion and clarity. Caitlin Clark had been taking hit after hit, none of them basketball plays, all of them messages. The game against the Connecticut Sun wasn't just physical, it was personal. Clark was hurting. You could see it, and the referees, silent. No calls, no warnings, just a shrug, as if this was all part of the game. For Sophie, that silence said everything, so she acted. Her foul wasn't reckless or random. It was a deliberate stand. It was protection. It was a statement that if the league wouldn't protect Clark, someone else would. Sophie didn't flinch. The $900 fine didn't matter. She wore it like a badge, a symbol of defiance in a league where silence had become currency. The reaction was immediate. Fans flooded in. Social media exploded. Her jerseys sold out. Podcast deals rolled in. But it wasn't about fame. It was about something much bigger. Fans weren't just cheering a hard foul, they were cheering the truth. A truth too many had been waiting to hear. In that moment, Sophie became more than a player. She became a symbol of courage, of resistance, of standing up when everyone else sat down, and the part the league couldn't bury. Sophie didn't just defend Clark, she explained the why. She peeled back the curtain. This wasn't just one team or one bad night. It was systemic. Sophie called it what it was: